actively worked to cause this situation. And, and people are, the thing that really, really bugs the crap out of me is that people like Occupy Wall Street idiots are posting stupid memes talking about how, there's actually a meme that I saw. It drove me crazy. It was like something about how, children in Flint, Michigan are dying, and we thought the Aurora shooter was bad. It's the Republicans that are terrorists because they want to shut down the EPA. First of all, the Republicans don't even want to shut down the EPA. Even though Republicans that claim they do are full of crap. They're bullshitting you people. They're not even saying the truth. But this is the most retarded thing I've ever seen. Because Flint, Michigan, a city run by Democrats, does this, basically poisons children with city water, and people want to talk about the Republicans and people that want to shut down the EPA as if they're the cause of this. What is wrong with your brain, you morons?
Political scapegoating there.
Oh, it's ridiculous. How does this even enter people's heads? How can you be that freaking stupid to make such a ridiculous statement? And I don't even like the Republicans.
Right.
The Republicans are idiots, but how can you say something like that?
At a time when the EPA is still in action, right?
Yeah, the EPA, there's nothing wrong with it. Nothing has even gone against the EPA. The EPA is fully functional right now. They have done nothing to prevent this.
They can't blame their sacred cow.
Yeah.
The government's a sacred cow. There's got to be someone else who's kind of maybe pulling the strings in this area or that way. The common denominator is never government. It's got to be something else.
Yeah.
All this private interest coming out there, and oh my God, voluntary charity. Oh man, that's crazy stuff. Especially from Walmart. What is their incentive? What's their gain from you?
So let's rely on the Environmental Protection Agency, the National Defense Authorization Act. Let's rally for things that sound good.
Right.
Yeah. The Freedom Act. Because it's about freedom. It makes us free. The Patriot Act.
Man, yeah. At least the voluntary contribution of water out there is interesting. That's great. That's great to show. Like, it's private businesses and interests and people out there donating and contributing to help one another outside of their own geographic region. A lot of people talk about national defense or forms of security, and it's like, well, no one's going to donate anything, right? It's like, well, people do it all the time, and different places and parts of the world that don't even live or consider that will affect them in any way. Mm-hmm. But their self-interest probably just feels, well, if that community's better off, that's my self-interest. Maybe one day if my community gets hurt, they might be in a better standing to help take care of us the same.
Right? Yeah, and stuff like even if you take the cynical point of view, which isn't even true, but if you take that cynical point of view that in a voluntary society, profit motive is key, and that's the only motive behind human action. Even if you take that viewpoint, well, we have just shown right now that the profit motive has driven this. And because Walmart and Pepsi have donated, freely simply for a PR campaign.
Right.
And that's frankly, I don't even necessarily think that's true. I think there are probably people at Walmart and Pepsi that do have, just genuine. Yeah. I mean, imagine that. People can work at corporations and still have a conscience. Now, that's not to say that the corporations themselves don't have completely, government-created bonkers incentives. Mm-hmm. But, I don't take that much of a cynical view to say that this is purely an attempt at, PR and profit. I'm sure as far as the corporation is concerned, mm-hmm. It basically is. But I think there are probably people in there that genuinely care about this.
I think Walmart might be a good discussion to kind of go over and kind of analyze, I guess, completely removed from like people's emotions and stuff like that. Like Bernie Sanders and a lot of people attack Walmart, and I mean I don't support state sponsored companies or like providing limited liabilities and stuff like that, which is what corporations are. But I guess there is something to kind of look at in which people say, well, they support the welfare state, but at the same time they're also one of the largest businesses that is robbed the most in terms of taxes. So of course, where would they rather the money go to after they've been robbed a huge substantial portion of amount of their profit? So that's something to look into, I guess, and kind of analyze that sort of stuff. But yeah, it's good to see businesses out there contributing, whereas the local government there has failed and can't function, it can't do anything.
In the sense that these are government-backed corporations, it's hard to say that it's a success for private business, but I see where you're going with it.
Yeah, and there is that factor, but I mean, this is, you can't. I think you would be hard pressed to say that this donation is a government, sourced by government.
Right.
So I mean, because it is, even if you look at it as just a PR campaign, that's still a private profit motive.
Sure.
So.
Well, on to a similar story. The Virginia Board okays permit for dewatering Virginia Power's coal ash ponds. Dominion, Virginia Power's plan to drain water from coal ash ponds into the James and Potomac rivers won state approval Thursday, despite opposition from environmental groups and a state senator and the Maryland Department of Natural Resources. So here we have a good example of a mega corporation using its financial prowess to influence government officials. I haven't looked into it far enough to see that these state officials are actually receiving funds. But with Dominion Power's stronghold in Virginia, you have to imagine that the only reason, part of the major reason they're able to get this legislation through is because they are huge, a major corporation.
So actually, so I've only recently moved here, and everywhere I've seen gets their power from Dominion.
Right.
Are they the only game in town, or
they're
are
the sole
there
supplier? Yes.
Really, the entire town?
State granted monopoly.
Yes.
That's ridiculous.
Right.
I mean, I think pretty much everywhere in America has, monopolies over for power and most annoying, well, not most annoying, but very annoyingly, like cable internet services or telecom services. But most of them are very, even within a city or within a county, at least chunked up, to different corporations, so that you can at least move within the city to a different spot, which isn't still is crap how they do it, but having one company have dominion, so to speak, over the entire town is ridiculous.
Yeah, and for talk about utilities or other kinds of stuff. For a long time, AT&T's history and its upbringing as youth was state sponsored and state granted monopolies in a lot of geographic regions for them to kind of spread all around.
Isn't AT&T weren't they originally Mama Bell? I know that's So Mama Bell was I'm not really clear on this, but as I understand it, Mama Bell was the state allowed monopoly over telecom, telephone services back in the 70s or 80s or whatever.
Yeah.
And they were broken up in, I believe, the 70s into stuff like Bell South and such. But I think it was actually the main thing ended up turning into AT&T. But I'm not really clear on that.
Well, an interesting point on this article is that officials from the Department of Environmental Quality and the Dominion Virginia Power assured the board that they would be filtering this water adequately. It's funny though, because in their plan for implementation, there will be a 2,000-foot long stretch of the James River that, in order for them to meet the quality standards requirements, there will be a path for dilution. So basically, they won't meet the standards that they set forth for water purity until it's diluted in 2,000 feet of the James River.
Wow.
So that's why there are so many skeptics with this plan. We're assured it's safe, but there's a dilution path.
So when are they actually set to do this? Do you know?
I'm not sure. Yeah.
Well, we better do our walks and our excavating or not, that's not the right word, but we need to do our James River adventures.
Before it's all
Yeah.
done and taken care of.
Before it's brown.
Yeah.
So hopefully in a free society, you would be able to test this water if it was somewhere near your land and actually charge whoever was responsible for the pollution.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of forensics now where you can trace pollution particles and trace them all the way back to where they come from.
Right.
But here's the great thing. Even without specific personal property, specific effect on your property close to the whatever, there is in a free society you can ostracize that company.
Right.
You can't do that here.
Right.
And especially in an apartment and this may actually not be the case in Virginia, but from what I'm used to, apartments are actually required. If you get an apartment, you're actually required by law to have electricity with the local power company in that apartment 24, always piped in. So it has to be there under somebody's name. So, and that may not be the case here, but.
Yeah, an organization and people talk about that's here to protection from pollution itself is the largest polluter in the world. That organization, that is just government. That was a question I had in economics today. We were talking about pollution, and we were like, "What do we want to do? A carbon tax? Do we just tax cars that are inefficient, creating a lot of pollution?" And I was like, "Well, if we're really that concerned about pollution, then why don't we just get rid of?" So I told him the largest polluter in the world, that is called government, and he kind of chuckled and laughed because everybody kind of established that government is the source of a lot of.
Yeah. Isn't there a coal plant like just a few blocks away from the White House? And that's been there since forever, only for the fact that it's had its fingers in the government coffers for so long.
That was something that Biden had a problem with, I believe, in Delaware. I believe that's where he was running from for a while, and he was going to pass like the Clean Water Bill Act or something like that, and apparently, it'll cost a lot of money for people to kind of abide by that rule for local businesses. And of course, the ones that, have been donating a lot towards this campaign, stop by and visit him and say, hey, we know you got to pass this. It's called the Clean Water Bill Act. You can't say no to that, right? You'll lose a lot of your constituents in the following. But, we'd appreciate an exception, maybe here and there. And you'll find at the back of every single legislative ruling that they could put out there in Congress, you flip to the back and every politician has their exceptions who this bill or law does not apply to. And those are their cronies, corporatists, the people who fund them, just like Dominion Power you're mentioning. How do they get away with this? Well, take a look who's kind of funding some of their campaigns, who's kind of funding some of the money out there.
So they're promising us that under their plan, the toxins like lead, mercury, arsenic were a few that were listed as byproducts of this coal ash or in this coal ash. So we're promised that it'll be diluted to the point where it won't harm us or the wildlife, but if it does, they're protected because they're doing just what they said they would do under legislation.
Yeah.
Government promises. Yeah, they always keep those.
Well, that's really the crux of it. I mean, it really comes down to, and that's what a corporation is to begin with. And it comes down to, we're following the rules, and so it's not really our problem. If you have a problem with the rules, take it up with them because they wrote it.
Right.
And that's the point. It's so that the people that are actually causing the issues don't have to deal with any of the consequences. It gets spread among the people.
Right.
I thought it was interesting. The Virginia group that made this decision finally was only 7 people. Of the 7, there was only one dissenter, and there were over 100 opponents, citizens at the meeting, while over 1,000 signed signatures.